Okay, again, I'm going to read through Mr. Tenev's PowerPoint. This one is a little longer than the last classes, but it's about urban land use. Your graphic organizer, basically what you would have to do is take notes on the different land use types. And so I'll ask you to pause and take notes when those slides come up. So today's learning goal, learning objectives. Students should be able to identify different land uses in an urban setting. Focus questions. What parts make up a city? How is land used? How can land use plans help cities become sustainable? In Canada today, just over 80% of Canadians live, work, travel, shop, and spend leisure time in cities. To make life easier for citizens, cities must be designed properly. In particular, city planners must ensure that the land in the city is zoned properly and used for the correct purpose. Cities. What do we need for land? Take a minute and study the aerial photograph on the next page. Then, once you have done so, try to identify as many different types of urban land use as you can find. Okay, so when I look at this, I see parks, definitely. I see possibly retail, like shops and stores, also some like houses. So there's residential areas. Then there's also like streets. So that's like transportation. Here's like a stadium, so maybe recreational or like parks, etc. Urban land use. In any Canadian city, there are 6 main types of urban land use. These are transportation land use, residential land use, commercial land use, industrial land use, institutional and public buildings, open space, and recreation. Let's take a look at each of these types of land use in more detail using page 261 to 273 as a guide. So notice here, these are the land use amounts in percentages for any Canadian city. Transportation land use. About 1/3 of our developed land is used for transportation. Good transportation lets us save time and have more leisure and boasts economic connections, shipping, human travel, etc. Lots of key considerations. Vehicles. Most people like the freedom of cars, but they're horribly inefficient. Mass transit is much more effective, but can't be used with slow population density. It's too expensive. Path travels. Largest kind, expressways. So for example, the 401, DVP, Allen Expressway. Mid-size is aerial routes like York Mills. Smallest are local roads like Brookbank, etc. And then there's terminal facilities, so places in the end of the journey, so parking lots, bus stations, etc. So what I would ask you to do now is pause this video with this slide or up and take some notes about this. Again, the important part is it's 1/3. Transportation land use is 1/3 of our land use. It's about transportation, so the movement or shipping of goods, and it's human travel. Some examples are 401, bus routes, parking lots, bus stations, and then identify different types of travel paths, so largest, mid-size, and smallest. So pause now and do that. Okay, so can you spot the 3 main kinds of travel paths on this map? So the easiest way to do that is to look at the size of the roads. Very large travel path, Don Valley Parkway. This is second largest, so it's a mid-size, and then the interior streets, such as residential streets, are your smallest. The second land use is residential land use. This type of land use includes all the places people live. Large sprawling homes to tall apartment buildings. About 40% of our developed land is residential. It can have either high or low population densities depending on 2 factors. Cost of the land, the more expensive, the denser. So if the land is very expensive, like downtown Toronto, they put high rises to fit more people on less space. And then the age of the neighborhood. So the older, the denser. Why? Well, there's no cars when many old neighborhoods were built. So I want you to pause now and again, just choose a few of these key points to write into your graphic organizer. 40% of the land use. It includes basically places people live, and there's high and low density, and those factors depend on cost and age of neighborhood. Pause now and do that. Okay, so they give you examples of residential land use. So Lakeshore Waterfront, Toronto, Ontario. Why high density? Well, it's very much a desirable area to be near a lot of cultures. So you obviously want to pack in as many people as you can because it can be very expensive. Okay, very nice picture. All right, so these are the different types of density in residential. High density. So high density is on a little bit of land, right? Lots of people, high rises on a little bit of land. Low density means there's less people and they're sprawled on more land. See how much more land this takes up. So they cover more land. And then medium density is a mixture. So they have some, low-rise buildings and some singles, but it is on more land than the high-rise. Markham subdivision, low or high-rise, or high density. I would say it's low. Let's look at commercial land use. Generally, about 5% of a city's land use is used for commercial purposes. This includes buying and selling, financial establishments, retail, things that are classified as a business, so shopping malls, those types of things. There are 5 main kinds of residential land use, each which we will explore in the following slides. Sorry, it's commercial land use. The first is neighborhood stores and ribbon plazas. So simplest products, low products like milk, newspaper, bread. So your street corner shop, your strip malls. The second is regional shopping centers. So large regional malls, so Yorkdale, Eaton Center, they have specialized stores, some high order products, often near expressways or large travel paths. The third is a big box power centers, usually at major intersections, perhaps one major anchor store like a supermarket, etc. The fourth is a central business district. This is usually downtown, greatest concentration of tallest buildings. So it could be Bay Street, for example, and well served by transit and roads. Okay, so the fourth land use is industrial land use. Industries provide important sources of jobs and economic activity for urban areas. This is 6% of land use most often, but it's declining. Before the 1940s, most factories were built in downtown areas. Remember, this was before highways and, our ability to travel longer distances. So workers had to walk to work or use a streetcar. Since the explosion of highways and trucks, industries tend to locate in suburbs as well, as the land is fairly cheap. So I would like you to pause the video and jot down particularly what land use is, and then we'll go into a little bit more about industrial land use. Okay, so the next one is, institutional and public buildings. So about 10% of urban land use is institutional and public buildings. So things like schools, hospitals, churches, government buildings. This type of land gives the city a character. Okay, pause the video and jot down those points in your graphic organizer. And the sixth land use is open space and recreation. So some land is left open because it is vacant or because it is a park, and uses like parks, hockey arenas, golf courses, etc. Cities need to use this land as much as possible to keep people healthy and happy. So again, in New York City, I guess Central Park would be considered this open space and recreational space. Okay, so pause the video and jot this down in your graphic organizer. So what I would suggest you do after you finish that graphic organizer is read over pages 261 to 273, particularly the definitions of the 6 types of land use. And it says complete questions 3 to 4 on page 263 and questions 3, 5, and 7 on page 271. So Mr. Tanev does generally take most of his questions from tests from the textbook. So I would take a look at those questions. If you're not necessarily going to answer them right now, I would jot those questions down on the back of my graphic organizer or on the next page of my graphic organizer. Okay, hopefully this video has helped. I'm not a geography teacher. We're just trying to help you work things through. Okay, bye.